Good day, everybody, and welcome to this World Urban Parks webinar from the World Parks Academy Development Series. We're going to talk about professional development today. We're going to look at how the World Park Academy certification program and process came to be and give you a little bit of background on professionalization of the field. So there's a lot of information we'll go through. We don't have a tremendous amount of participants, and so we might not have a lot of questions, but this will certainly be valuable as a recording also. Today what we're going to talk about is how the Certified Park Professional and the Certified International Park Professional requirements came to be. They are competency-based, so we want to talk a little bit about how that was validated. We also wish to speak on the vision that was created when the World Urban Parks, or its predecessor, the International Federation of Park and Recreation Administration, created the International Academy, and then speak a little bit more on competencies as they relate to certification, eligibility, and criteria. So there's quite a bit to cover, and we'll proceed with just talking about why we want a credentialing program, and a certification program is a form of a credential. There's a lot of definitions up there for you. If you take a look at them, credibility is one of the reasons that we focused on this at this point in time, and it's really an issue about how the people who are your stakeholders and maybe the public see the role of your organization that provides park services, manages public lands, takes care of conservation functions or nature functions, and also maybe provides recreation or access to recreation. In order to gain that credibility, we know that there's a set of knowledge, skills, abilities, and behaviors that are required of each of us in this field, and those are generally classified as competencies. So we can tell you pretty specifically what the competencies are that are required for the park, public land, conservation, nature, recreation field. And once we know those competencies, we can ask that our agency or our nonprofit organization is given the capability to go ahead and do the work that needs to be done. And with those two factors in place, some competencies, hiring the correct staff, training them, and capability, which is our collective ability because we have the right resources and people, the right resources and money, the land, the ability to manage and market those services, we know we can improve the credibility or have some basic credibility. So these three terms are somewhat related to each other, but they're all more or less founded on having the right people do the job who are competent based on what we know they need to do as defined by the research that we've conducted. So the World Parks Academy, World Urban Parks, and the Eppley Institute for Parks and Public Lands at Indiana University started this process quite a long time ago. You can see that the parent or founding organization to World Urban Parks, IFPRA, and Indiana University's Eppley Institute first started partnering in 2007 at a World Urban Parks Congress in Dublin, Ireland. We took quite a long time to move through gaining consensus with all the different countries that wanted to weigh in on this. And by 2011, we had a meeting in Denmark to try and speak a little bit to this. And by 2012, we decided that it was time to move forward in some kind of joint partnership. The Indiana University led a lot of the effort because of the funding that was necessary to do it, and the Eppley Institute for Parks and Public Lands at Indiana University invested heavily in the program. By 2013 and 14, with a lot of collaboration between the parties, we ended up with a certified park professional, a certified international park professional, and a World Park Academy. And so some of this is based on all of those activities that largely occurred between 2011 and 2013. So we'll move forward on that. All right. We know that the International Academy that we're trying to work with, called the World Parks Academy, only exists when we collaborate. And to do that, it's important that we focus on what an academy is, which is a group of scholars or scientists or people who maintain standards in a particular field. And so the World Park Academy wants to first focus on establishing standards and then maintaining those standards. And we know that it's difficult to maintain standards internationally, so we use a virtual society of people who are connected using technology, and they want to promote and maintain standards for the field. And so that's what's been happening over the last 3 or 4 years. We have approximately 60 certified individuals so far. We'll talk a little bit more about certification as soon as we get further down the line and explain some foundational information for many of you that it might be helpful to know. All right. The Academy architecture is pretty much focused on this little drawing. So what we want to do is we want to establish standards for the park, recreation, nature, conservancy, public lands field. They're all fairly allied specializations within a broader field. And that is something that would apply to the professionals of the organizations that are in there. And as a result, these standards become competencies, and they're applied also then to the organizations. And what we know is that through the research, what a great, credible organization should have, as opposed to what one that is maybe starting out or struggling a bit should have. And we can identify those gaps that exist between that. And in doing so, what we want to do is have the Academy bridge the gaps by providing training and some standards that people can self-guide themselves, guide to, or can self-develop. And so what we're going to focus on a lot after you become certified or an individual becomes certified is helping them identify their gaps in competencies so they can improve the credibility of their organizations. So in doing that, one of the key things we have to do is just have these functions clearly laid out. And this is what the World Park Academy does. We've established the competencies and credentialing requirements. The World Park Academy is in charge of awarding the certifications and renewals in various countries. We seek to accredit training by others so that we can have a continuing education and competency standard. We're providing online training through the World Park Academy and other organizations. So we hope that other partners will help us provide more training that's applicable to the people who might be in rural urban parks or other international organizations. And we want to create some partnerships that help us provide structure and credibility that maintain these standards and programs. In doing all of that, the Academy has to kind of also understand some foundational efforts. And the first is just what is a profession. We think of professions maybe as medical doctors, lawyers, but we also know that you can apply that broadly to business, you can apply it broadly to government administration, and you can certainly apply that broadly to the concept of park, recreation, and public lands managers. In fact, what we found in the competency study is that the unique mix and the wide variety of competencies that there are that park, recreation, and public land managers have to have is far more demanding than, say, lawyers and medical doctors, not in how the depth of knowledge, but the wide variety of knowledge they need to have. It certainly is much greater than most government professionals who think that it's an administrative position. And while some of that is true, there's a tremendous amount of specialized knowledge relating to the nature of the resources that you manage. So this definition of a profession is pretty standard. You can see it's almost 35 years old or 40 years old, so it's quite big, and you can see it's from an allied field about sport. But it's something you do for fellow humans. It's specialized skills that we can acknowledge. There's a body of knowledge that you get trained in. There's a lot of effort regarding that, this definition. And so further, there's some more research that shows there's the following conditions for a profession to exist. There has to be an organized body of intellectual theory that's expanding. That's done with a lot of the journals and information that you can see regarding parks and recreation. There has to be some intellectual techniques that serve as a theoretical analysis and conclusions, and we have that through the research study we've done. The techniques that are taught or learned by people in the profession, they have to be able to be applied to people and to meet their needs. There's a period of long training and educational preparation. A lot of times we have people who learn on the job, but that could be training, but there is educational degrees and there are educational continuing education programs. There's an association, so we have a number of national associations and a number of international associations that try to knit people into high quality communication. Hard to do across all the time zones of our globe, but we work on that. And then there's a code of ethics. So these are the definitions or maybe the conditions for a profession to exist. And so the park, recreation, and public lands management profession meets most of those to varying degrees. So what I'd like to do is take just a break for a second and ask you to contemplate, and you don't have to answer this, but we've got a question there that says, just a quick question for all of you who might be at the recording, but you might answer this to yourself. Does your country have national standards for park, public land, and recreation professions? Some countries do. The USA does. They have 2 or more standards. They have certified park and recreation professional, a certified park and recreation executive. There's also international, maybe, or national certifications that might apply to the landscape architects, like we have those in Ireland and in the UK. There seems to be some in South Africa and mostly around the world focusing on landscape architecture. But there may not be some that are through like the IUCN where they provide some training, but there may not be a professional standard or credential. So while we have a small audience today answering that, you might think about that as we go through the next few slides. It's fairly important for you to think through that process and to contemplate whether that's something that your country might want to do, or maybe you want to affiliate with the World Park Academy's certification standards that help define the profession. But those certification standards are based on a standard that is a KSA, it's called, or it's a knowledge, skill, ability, and behavior, otherwise known in the acronym KSA. And each of those defines what a person needs to be able to do to perform work roles or occupation functions successfully. There's different requirements dependent upon the positions, based on how much responsibility the person has, and based on some of the different types of competencies dependent upon what the agency or organization's mission is. And we know that while there's some great standards out there, it still requires the individual to determine, with maybe help of a supervisor or the organization, what are the competencies that best apply to their position, and that in turn helps them with the developmental process. So the competencies for the profession are KSAs, and they are, in essence, some type of a standard for the employee or for yourself if you're looking at this for your self-development through the World Park Academy. The World Park Academy and Indiana University through the Eppley Institute and the International Federation of Park and Recreation Administration, before World Urban Parks existed, decided that they would work on a competency research study. It was performed in 2012 and 13, and there was a lot of these things that happened with some environmental scan of what the profession could be and what the standards were across the world, a review or literature review that provided us with information and background. We did research with quite a few professionals across the globe, and then we used a jury of experts to create a final framework. And so 103 people participated in the research study. We used a snowball sampling technique to try and identify the experts across the globe. They were represented by international experts in park management, recreation, horticulture, urban planning, green design, arboriculture, and landscape architecture. So this is a diverse set of already existing, in some cases defined professions, but certainly defined fields of study that all have a role in parks, recreation, and public lands management. The process created the following framework. So what we did in the literature review is try to identify all the possible competencies that could be part of the park, recreation, and public land profession. And you can see all of them had some universal values about being able to speak appropriately, communicate appropriately, carry out your duties because you were able to work with people, and those kinds of competencies. And then there were competencies in asset management, operations and maintenance, project management, resource management, business acumen, and these are pretty common throughout everybody's job. And then as you move up a little bit, you might have people who have to have some supervision competencies. A specialty might be people who are interpretation and education specialists. There's an emerging competency in public health and the role that parks and urban spaces, urban open spaces play, particularly in urban health, but also just in nature and being able to access nature. Recreation seems to be a bit of another specialization, more infrequently in the broader field. Public policy, planning are also some. And then leadership appears to be something that everybody does, but it really becomes focused at the executive level. So these competencies were discovered through the research, and what we have with this list of competencies is a series of tasks that everybody should be able to perform. And so the universal competencies, as you can see, from there are continual learning. You should, as a professional, continue to learn all the time because that's what profession is defined as development, helps with credibility. Some character competencies about honesty, integrity, interpersonal skills, and then, of course, oral and written communication. And then you can see in this particular document the parent competency at the top, and in this page there's 5 of them, these 5 right here. You can see them, and underneath each one of them there is a competency. It could be called a child competency, or it could be just called a competency. And those help define the parent competency of asset management or operations and maintenance better. And further, in the competency document that you can get from the World's Park Academy, each of those child competencies, such as planning and procedures in asset management, is further defined by 5 or 6, maybe 3 or 4 task statements of KSAs, knowledge, skills, and abilities, that a professional should be able to perform, know, or have other people perform in the area of planning and procedures for asset management, for example. So each of these, as you can see, might have 2 to 5 sub-statements or task statements. And you can see that just these 5 competencies for the certified park professional are fairly complexly defined by the research, but it helps us also define what the standards for the profession are. In addition to these 5, the certified park professional has another 5, which you can see represented by these columns, and those are also further defined by the competency statements that follow along the table rows, the columns, and again, each of these are defined by 2 to 5 task statements of what you should be able to do. If you're going to be working in public health, you should know how to do and operate a community collaboration. And so there's 2 or 3 statements that define how to do that. So all of that information is available through the World Park Academy. There are individuals on the Board of Regents for the World Park Academy, and at Indiana University you can help guide you through reviewing those competencies, and they're available online. One of the questions we want you to consider as you move forward is, I can get the poll to come up, just to think about that. And these are the competencies all listed for you, and in your country you might have a poll that suggests what are the most important competencies for your profession in your country. And to do that, we'd simply have you suggest that you ask you and your peers which of these competencies might be most important. And so you look at it, you might say that we really need to focus on resource management and protecting natural resources and historic resources, and then developing the leadership to really have the competencies go forward. So while we have a small group of people looking here today, that certainly is one of the important things that a national organization can do, or you can do as a group of individuals, or we can assist you at the World Park Academy with helping define what's most important for your local community, state, region, province, or nation to determine what training you should emphasize. And so as we go through this sort of expressed interest or need, you can see how it varies, and it depends upon the region or the country that you're in. But you should contemplate that and think about that, and certainly there's people who can help you determine that. But it's based on this research, which identified these 10 competencies for the certified park professional. The international nature of the World Park Academy was also represented by trying to define international competencies. And so these are kind of added on top of the certified park professional competencies, the previous 10, and there are 4 international competencies for park professionals: transcontinental park management, global perspectives, standard-based multidisciplinary issues competency, and global management approaches. This is leading edge. There is no other research that talks about these particular issues as international, and it's a focus of the World Park Academy. But you can see that there are a number of child competencies, or just plain competencies, underneath each one. And again, there are task statements that define what letter A under Roman numeral 1 would be, which is the ability to work on international or multicultural teams. So as you look at participating in international understanding and work with parks, these are the international competencies that a certified park professional would have. And they're fairly complex, as you can understand. Under global perspective, there's different political systems and power frameworks, or power and influence frameworks, depending upon the type of government you've got set up, the foundational roles of government, how mature or evolved the government is. And then in some cases it's the nonprofit world, and those have highly regulated systems of which they govern in different countries also. So as this all goes forward and you start looking at it, there are a number of approaches that really require a great bit of analysis and a lot of listening to people from other countries to find out how they deal with different cultures, so that it isn't just centric to your values as a professional or the country that you are now in. So again, you can become a certified park professional or a certified international park professional by focusing on these competencies and comparing your current abilities, knowledges, and skills, KSAs, to the standards that are established in these task statements. The certification programs that we offer at the World Park Academy are pretty important, and so one of the things we want you to focus on is just understanding what those requirements are. The World Park Academy has designed a very flexible process for you to attain certified park professional status. You either have to have some type of tertiary or university degree and 2 years of park experience, or at least 3 in at least 3 of the CPP competencies that you rate. There's another way in case you don't have this initial bullet met, and that's 5 years of senior level park management and 4 years for the CPP competencies that we help you measure, and then or 5 years of just general park management experience and completion of training as approved by the World Park Academy that sufficiently meets 5 CPP competencies. So this is a more development process for those people who may be earlier in their career. This is an alternative for people who have been in senior level positions, maybe perhaps have quite a bit of experience and may not have had the opportunity to work on a university or tertiary degree. So those are very flexible, and you can meet any of those, and certainly there's some guidance and assistance at the World Park Academy to help you with the qualification process. The Certified International Park Professional is a little bit more rigorous because it does focus on moving on to what's called a senior level. And to do that, we need people who have this professional certification already. So if you don't hold professional certification, like the U.S., you might hold the Certified Park and Recreation Professional or the Certified Park and Recreation Executive. In New Zealand, you might hold the, I think it's called the New Zealand Recreation Certificate. You don't have one of those. I think Canada's developing one now. I believe there's some landscape architecture certifications in Europe. The alternative is for you to get the CPP designation directly from the World Urban Parks, and then you can go through this process of assessing to meet 4 out of 4 CIPP competencies, 4 years of park management experience, and 2 at the senior professional level, and then being a member of World Urban Parks to expose you to international park management. The process is a little bit also difficult or different because what we've done is we've created also a senior professional clause for the CPP, and the senior professional clause, which we want to share with you, is best defined on the World Park Academy website. It basically means that if you've got quite a few years, I think it's 10 years, of international or national senior level experience, plus can show that you have met 3 of the 4 CIPP, Certified International Park Professional competencies, at a high level, higher than average, that you would be awarded the Certified International Park Professional. That specific requirements are found on the World Parks Academy website. So one of the things as we conclude is it's important for you probably to think a little bit about does your country have a post-degree professional training program? Because the other thing that we require of individuals who hold Certified Park Professional designation or Certified International Professional Park Professional designation is that they complete 30 hours of training every 3 years that meets a standard for continuing professional development. This webinar does that. This webinar and answering test questions about it will provide you with 0.1 continuing education units towards 3 total continuing professional development program units. And so over 3 years, it will require basically about 30 hours of continual improvement and training. And so you see that some of our limited audience says their country does have it, and the result is that they are maybe in a better position to maintain a credential. If you don't, you'd have to rely on webinars or maybe host your own and create some standards for that. So I think that's one other consideration that you'll have. And then lastly, as you think about this, one of the things you might do, although we won't get much of an answer today here, is just do you think that you would attend more WPA training webinars? And so there's a few number of you here that are here today. But as you look at this recording, you might also go look at the schedule that we have in the World Park Academy, also at World Urban Parks, or your national organization, and see if there's webinars or programs you can attend where they will issue you CEUs or continuing professional development units or something like that, so you can maintain your certification. So Japan has the QPA certification, and they issue, I think, CPDs, which are fairly equivalent to CEUs. So there's lots of ways to go within your country. If you have a national training program, maybe a university has training programs that's nearby, maybe you have a local association or an informal group of people. Or I guess the other thing you can do is certainly concentrate on collaborating with the World Parks Academy to help us build more webinars. So the certification program that we have is fairly robust. It's designed based on research that was conducted by a university. It creates 10 competency areas for certification of park professionals and an additional 4 for certification of international park professionals. And the process is governed by experts from around the nation. Dr. Christy Boylan is from Ireland with over 40 years of experience in Parks and Recreation in Europe. Torgeir Sorensen is in Norway as our deputy chair. I've served as a secretary from Indiana University in the USA. Dr. Richard Hendrick is from South Africa. Dr. Yoritaka Toshiro is from Japan. Graciela Barrero is from Argentina. And Jason Summers is from Australia. And of course, we have other ex officios, including the president of World Urban Parks, Gil Penselosa from Canada, and our executive director of World Urban Parks, Dr. Digby White, who's a New Zealander by birth and lives in Australia currently. So we're interested in making sure we keep the international standards forefront, and we have an international board of regions to govern all the activities of the World Park Academy as it moves forward. Finally, I think what we want to wrap up with is thanking you for viewing our webinar and the recording. We look forward to answering any questions you might have through email. You can always email us at eppley@indiana.edu, and look at the World Park Academy. You can also find email links and information at that website. I would like to thank you for your time, and hope that you enjoyed this brief webinar and that there is some value in it for you. And if you're interested in obtaining continuing education units for maintaining a certification, please see the World Parks Academy site, and they'll guide you to a registration site where you can view this webinar again, and also where you can take a short test to prove that you attended and that there is some learning that occurred. So very best wishes for the day to all of you, and thank you for your time and your attention during this webinar.